Sticks and stones indeed break bones, but not without first taking back the word. Sanction. Did you hear it? First, the prideful silence. We treaded lighter than ever, having dropped the big stick to better hold the word we needed back, all the more since being bored to recklessness. Inner border petulance eclipsed all would-be antagony, reducing those unlike us to darkness. We've taken to shadow boxing because shadows don't bleed. They don't impolitely break. They are, after all, just remnants of those whose light we've blocked with the so-called good of us. Did you hear it? Next came the gasp of inevitability, as mothers learned that giants hold the death in a deadline. Did you hear it? Equality. Every foot through the night, every color, every gender, every size made even in terror. The earth received every pounding of the death parade equivocally. The soil recognized justice, providing an impartial end to the gravity above. Did you hear it? Did you hear right here? The pause in the murmur, the next great accusation of violation made still for just that blink. Distraction from our perpetual irritation? The sobering view of true reference, the great equalizer of indiscriminate rage. Cultivated, anticipated, much belated, and still it just waited for the frail periphery to fade again within the limits of our own less consequential, though shockingly louder troubles, our bad habits. Welcome to Tug of Heart. That's a little bit dark, but what I did is I went to my notes and typed in bad habits, and that's what popped up among things I'd written. Leroy had asked me to open with the writing. Hello, Leroy.
Hey, Lori,
That should
that's
cure you of
something.
letting me do it.
I'm telling you, there's a cadence to the way that you write, and it's beautiful. Void of context, it's beautiful. And then the context, I don't want to say that it's esoteric, but it definitely requires a minute or a reread
I will
because
tell you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, it's deep, and it's certainly, I mean, man, wow, what an open window to your mind.
Yeah, it's kind of
Uh,
scary there. This actually was just about at the time I wrote that. It's been a while, several months, but not more than a year. Um, it was me thinking about how nowadays we habitually hold on to thoughts and do not believe in bending very much, even when we see the worst happening around us. That was because I like the darkest part that habits can lead to, especially when it's like a community habit.
I'm going to have to lean on you a whole bunch during this episode because when I came up with the hobby of habits, and I said, well, let's talk about the hobby of habits. I was thinking about my inability to pass Carvel's on the way home and get some homemade ice cream. So I don't feel like I'm prepared.
That's all I'm thinking too, just so you know.
Okay.
That's just what I in a pinch pulled up because I had like a minute notice.
It was really good. It was really good.
Thanks. That's it's kind of one that I a private one. I keep most of my writing private because and that's a habit maybe I need to break. We were talking, you ended last time talking about putting your feathers on, tying the stake around your neck, and because it's the shock, because a lot of times when things happen to us very bad in life, when I lost Seth, if you have to dig very deep to try to force a reason into things, among the lower levels of reason at least is that when terrible things happen to us, we're kind of shocked awake, at least temporarily. The problem is we're in the habit of returning to where we were before. But there are opportunities when we see really bad stuff around us to take a look and our habits and what could use some serious changing or minor.
During our previous, I told you that for me, I think it's just familiar. And that's why we return and, to that habit, because it's familiar. It's our go-to. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily a champion plan. It's just that we know that we can endure whatever happens, and so that's why I was thinking in reality, that's why I was thinking about the hobby of habits.
That I love that. I think it's almost in line with what I said, because when we return to something, it could be the poorest choice we could possibly make. And there is that like kind of push where it's not a champion plan, but I know for sure I'm still here today and I've done that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Even though it is slowly killing you, so far, my history with this terrible habit is it's not yet happened. As long as I can perform it again, I'm proven right again.
The eternal optimist. So far, so good. I keep doing this and I'm still here.
Right.
The geography has changed. The people around me have changed.
Everybody,
but I'm going to try it again with a new
people crew. Around me are constantly changing.
Right.
But I'm keeping the habit.
A habit of changing people in and of itself. So we like habits, and habits are declared for one reason, so that we can break them. I mean, we were talking last about, moving from the comfort of habits. We kind of like we're going in that direction. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, it requires change. It demands change. We need change. Change is beneficial, but we insist on hoarding a hobby of habits. And we got to get out of that. I mean, it's too big a bridge too far to say that we're going to just kind of reinvent ourselves all the time, but we can make little tiny adjustments. I think that oftentimes we're like, oh my God, I need to change my life. I need a new purpose. I need a new this, a new that. We don't got to change our life. We just got to, it's much more tolerable when we just say, well, we got to modify a few things.
Right. And
don't even change the habits, just modify the habits. And a lot of times you can keep the habit, but add one little element and it changes the habit completely.
Example, please.
Example?
Yeah.
So we were talking about, wow, every time I feel a bout of darkness over my heart, whether it's from memories, and we said, oh, well, one of the ways to combat that, when at that moment, walk out your front door and do something different to change. So every time I feel this, I do this, and that changes the way you feel about that. And now that becomes a reminder to do something good.
Right. Can I ask you a question? As somebody
yes.
who has kind of conquered, I would say, or in the...
Oh, that's a big word. Be careful.
At least deep in intent and action so far of conquering any habits of disciplined inactivity. I mean, what I'm saying is you've moved into like more disciplined activity fitness. Because for me, when I think of anything about changing a habit, I'm very prone to sticking to something that I do. And that's like, I am a habitual person. But because of that, I can remain a little bit static where it's very hard to shift my direction. So I find it harder to do the initial act than to follow through with repeating it. So what gives? Like, how would I even get past that? And if you can, in relation to the heart, how would somebody go about approaching it?
When you say in relation to the heart, approach what, Lauren?
A new habit or distance from it. Like what do you, because I think of will when I think of habits, and there's will and then there's willpower. And I always think the first move to doing something new for me is an act of willpower more than an act of will. But there are some things that you can't just like, it's not enough to say, I will do this. Like, what makes the difference from that to now I'm standing and on my way out the door?
I think that we have to like really, I don't want to say meditate because I don't even think I'm like a meditator, but I mean,
I'm not a meditator.
We have to focus on things. I remember I wanted to start drinking more water. And I was like, I was doing it, but I wasn't having fun with it. And then I started, and this is going to sound crazy because I'm a little bit OCD. So then I started experimenting with water and the taste of water. And did it taste better at this temperature or this temperature? And I started just focusing on just kind of, I didn't taste it at my tongue. I tasted it kind of where it landed. And if it was internally.
Okay.
So if it was too cold, it was a little bit harsh, but if I got it kind of right, it would land and it just like, wow.
I'm going to put Lisa on speaker real quick so we have a guest.
It was a little wake up. Perfect. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
You're live with us on Tug of Heart. How you doing?
I'll talk to you later.
Real quick.
Say hi to Leroy. Okay, bye.
Okay.
She's trying to talk to us. Lisa, I've actually been working on, we've been trying to alter our eating and exercise more. And it's proving harder than you would think, but it's also like so simple.
Yeah.
But that's not enough to make that move. Finish with the water. I'm sorry about that.
So you had to find a point where you could really appreciate it. So if you're trying to change your diet, which it sounds like you are, and I recently went through that. When I say recently, like 3 years ago, and we had to change the diet. Just because as we get older, some of those habits, you got to break them. If we choose, if we want to have, the benefits, that come along with being a little bit healthier, a little bit lighter or whatever. So in doing that, there was fun in the activity of experimenting with new recipes. Wow, you got to eat fish 4 days a week. Ooh, that was very hard in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But then through, going through, there was a process in figuring out, wow, this is how we like it. This is what really works. And we don't bore of this, we still look forward to it. So I think you just have to kind of find ways to, number one, experiment, because that's always fun. That's how we developed habits, hobbies. That's how we developed habits and a hobby of habits to begin with. We did something.
That curiosity kind
by
of.
By accident.
Yeah, actually, yes.
And then we're like, wow, that wasn't bad. So we have to create an opportunity for accidents.
Actually, that's.
With our menu, with our ingredients.
Yes.
So now we have salmon 2 nights a week with apple pie filling on it. No, not really. I'm just kidding. Not really.
Oh my gosh. And I think it sounds to me like your intention did a little bit of a stretch first. Like you had talked about Valentine's Day doing something. It's almost like you set yourself up for the perfect accident by kind of announcing, I'm going to do this. And then it fell by the wayside and you weren't even thinking of it when you actually acted it out.
The subconscious is a very
Like you
powerful thing.
planted your own little seed, and it was like you
Yeah.
didn't even know I actually orchestrated this. It felt accidental or incidental, at least, right?
Maybe that's what I'm getting at when I say, that I don't want to call it meditation, but at least acknowledging a desire to do something a little bit different. Now in matters of the heart, because that was a matter of the heart. There's a couple of things that I learned in that little trying to develop that habit of doing something kind, something outside, something greater than myself. One is the kindness that it was greater than I imagined, not for a recipient, but for me. And I found out what tends to bring me the closest to crying. You'll remember not too long ago we talked about crying. I love to see people helping other people. I don't know why, but for some reason I should be like overjoyed. But just seeing the kindness, the kind acts, when somebody does something for somebody else, that's probably going to be the one that breaks me, where I actually cry.
Right.
Because I love to see it. That's bizarre. Right. Totally off the topic of habits, but that's a new habit. So I'm trying to find new opportunities. It's funny that it's actually work, because I would think like, oh, man, I'm somewhat of a, well, I don't want to say evolve because that's really far. I don't want to use that kind of term, but I would consider myself aware of, doing for other people. And yet it's work to create opportunities. But that's a habit I'm trying to acquire now.
Actually, I want to mention work. I'm going to kind of be thinking about it as I tell you this, as I just respond to you, because that's amazing what you just said. Everything that you're saying now, to me, I was trying to process how you actually went about dropping some habits and exchanging them for better habits. And one of the things that you told me that happened along the way is, first of all, that intention was set for the health, okay, or for kindness or for whatever. But then, remember you were talking about like the more you just face head-on difficulties or a hard time in your life, that you're already in it. You've already addressed it, and you're already, your footing is already where it needs to be to overcome certain obstacles. Okay. So I was thinking just now, I was picturing that and I was like, that's maybe if we need to say, I really want to pick up a habit in life instead of worrying about dropping habits, but pick up habitual intention, where to bring it back to the heart, where be aware of what your intention is each day as a human first. In that sense, I mean, in terms of what good do I want to do today? And that could be your habitual intention. And then you had said as you were doing it, I think you gave the number 30 days and then it just happened. But it's not that it's just happening. The continuance is there without you being able to kind of trace, like, how did I do it today? Because it's just been what I've been doing. It's just that you never retracted that original intention. Right. And I don't want to make it more difficult than it needs to be. So just picture like you drive to work every morning and at some point you just kind of got there. You're like, oh, I was messing with radio stations, for those of us old enough to know about that in a vehicle or a CD. And you're like, and yet here I am. But you don't have that like mental trace of what happened along the way, because this is just what you do. Because the intention is still for you to check on puppies every single morning. That's enough to drive the rest.
So there has to be something about not meditating, but just we have to identify, like first and foremost, we have to identify where we want to land. Uh, Dad used to say, who would you be if you didn't know who you've been? Because, well, I mean, what you're saying is, why would I would do this and this and this and this? Oh, okay. Well, I have a habit of drinking coffee. I don't, but somebody could have a habit of drinking coffee. So maybe when they get a cup of coffee, just get a second cup of coffee. Like, just that. And because now you got 2 cups of coffee, you're not going to drink 2 cups of coffee. You may for a day or two, but pretty soon you're going to find somebody, you're going to be looking for opportunities to give that second cup away. So even if you turn
for that success of giving, like you're
right, you have to trick yourself. Like, listen, I'm not very good at giving. And if I go around looking for somebody and I got to engage them and I got to say, hey, would you like a cup of coffee? You know what? Just buy 2 cups of coffee, turn around and give one to the guy behind you. I think they do that. I saw something I think they were doing that at McDonald's. Somebody was like, yeah, let me go ahead and pick up the order behind me. That whole pay it forward thing.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, let me go ahead. And the lady's like, that'll be $347. It's a school bus. Hang on. So maybe there's a little bit of mechanical influence in changing habits. So maybe it's finding somebody to buy a cup of coffee for is a big deal, but buying 2 cups of coffee and then letting it figure itself out is not so difficult.
Man, what you just said is like I don't know if it's oversimplification or it's a big, or if it's actually quite a stretch to get there, but I think I'm on board. I think I'm going to try a habit this week. One of the things
you're going to take up drinking coffee.
Yeah, I'm going to take up seeking somebody's second cup.
There you go.
Being in the right place. I'm going to try to land that spot where somebody's doing that.
Just ask them, do you listen to Tug of Heart? Where's my coffee?
I heard this thing. So I have a very vague, shaky memory about it, but I'm going to try to share it anyways, because it just came to mind while you were talking there. And it's this thing in life where life has this way of feeling unfair sometimes, because you picture the kid who has carefully stacking blocks. We'll call that kid Lori. Okay. An hour to build a beautiful structure. And then another child, just for craps and giggles, we'll call Leroy, comes along and just knocks it down. Now, never mind right and wrong. This isn't an ethical question, but there's something in life that seems unfair, that it would take so long to build and a second to tumble, right? And it was at the time I heard it, I found that interesting. Like, how do we reconcile that life is like this, that a bridge will fall in one piece that could take years to build, that the one day you decide you're not going to exercise may be the beginning of you no longer exercising. And I'm connecting this to habits, and I know I'm making it a little bit awkward, but the thing is, the bridge that you can reconcile the two within it is simply work. And you said the mechanical influence. That's what made me think of this. I had wrote down mechanical influence. Well, now that's work. And that's the only equalizing element we have to contribute to anything in terms of habit. And that is the habit of work, and also the habit of a decent disposition when it comes to considering work in life. The only way we can somehow justify that it's easier, that it's equal, that I should build something and it so easily comes down, is that, and I will continue working. Right? Is that's that mechanical influence? Because when you said it earlier, it sounded almost like push yourself into a compulsory place. You see the neighbor, and you said this with the Sherpa too. Don't think why and how, especially how. get to work. That's your answer for a whole lot. I don't know how to get to work. I'll force myself. I'll throw a brick through a window. You've also said that.
You always come back to that story.
Because it's one of my favorite. I've thought of busting several things because I know that'll force me to trigger that mechanical influence.
So when I say mechanical influence, I had a couple of stents placed. Man, I was beside myself because I've always said, wow, I'm really healthy and whatever. So I had a couple of stents placed. So then it became very important. And in spite of having all the herniated discs and challenges that I have, I needed to lose a little bit of weight, and I needed to have a stronger heart, better blood flow, better lung capacity. I needed all these things. So I know that if I set out to do it, I'm going to have, I want everybody to believe that I'm just mental fortitude guy, but I'm not.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I'm not. So what I did is I have a buddy, and he's a great guy. Not a great guy like I want to date him, but he's a really, really good friend. And I said, hey, what do you think if we start exercising? I said, I had these couple of stents placed. He's like, yeah, I'll give it a try. I'm like, okay. So we started exercising. And maybe it's just good fortune, but we stuck it out. And now we're past that point where it's just the body's in shock, like we know what's coming. And so, and we're not doing anything crazy, but definitely, some stretching, some yoga, a little bit of Suzanne Summers. But that's the mechanical influence, because he's there waiting for me. And maybe he shows up because he thinks I'm there waiting for him. So there's a mechanical component to developing a habit. So now we have a healthy habit, of exercising. And, and we're there, we encourage each other. So I think sometimes it's more than just, saying, oh, I'm going to pick up a habit of this or a habit of that. I mean, that's hard to do. It's hard to change a habit. But what is easy is to put mechanical implements, So when you go get your coffee, just give me a second cup. What do I do with a second cup? I can't drive holding 2 cups, so let me give one away. Maybe there's a girl who, a girl or a guy, looks like they just dropped their kid off. They're probably late to get to the office. Here's a cup of coffee, sir.
Mm-hmm.
2 creams, 1 sugar. Hope you love it. Enjoy it. Doesn't matter if they like it or not. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they turn around and give it to somebody else. But the point is that if we do something, if we implement a mechanical caveat, we might have more success.
I want to tell you, you just really clarified for me a lot about how a lot works right now. Because it's the mechanical influence. Because one of the things I say, because it's what we have a harder time changing is our mind than our what we're doing. Right? I mean, you're driving home and you see a roadblock, you don't plow through it. But you normally wouldn't say with intention, I'm going to just try a different way, unless you're kind of that mindset. And the reason I'm saying that is because
you might like a different route. I'm sorry, Lori. You might like a different route better, but had it not been for that mechanical implement of a roadblock,
right,
you would never know there was a better way.
That's right. And because you're habitually thinking, but one of the things that I have always believed when it comes to the heart, and I'm so happy you said this because it kind of solidifies that. People, a lot of times when it comes to, let's say, more ethical, more spiritual, if you want to call it that, but work and habits, good or bad, and how we want to kind of shift our heart to be better. I always think that we make the mistake of like waiting in life for a change of heart. Like I'm waiting for something to just come upon me. My heart will be changed, and everything around me will change that day. We're waiting for our Paul moment, if you want to call it that, get knocked off the horse and stand up a new man. But I think the fact is most regular people, the majority, actually can start doing things. And for me in life, in matters of the heart, the way that I went about it is I started changing things mechanically. I know objectively this is right. I just did it. And what ends up happening, which this is brilliant that we ended up here. We don't have to always change the heart and the habits follow. Sometimes we change the habits and the heart follows. It works both ways. One can convert the other. And I think that's excellent what you're saying about changing. Doesn't matter how it started. When we become healthier, all of us will be there together. The wholeness of ourself. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
I love that you said that. And here I gave you too much credit for that mental fortitude, but the mental fortitude is actually being accomplished with just a very much more shallow choice.
So without getting, without being an advocate for religion or faith or belief, we might have to kind of unearth and explain and better understand faith. But I'm not going to tell you what faith means, except for faith in its very generic form, that we have to have faith that if we do this, the other will just be a complementary reality. Like right. You're saying, you just do it, even if you don't feel like doing it, because the result might be elation, enjoyment, pleasure.
Actually, that's really big because
in relief, in being a Sherpa for somebody else.
It is about faith, because if you think about it, even in a very natural sense, you don't even have to go to the supernatural. People have a certain amount of faith. Their car is going to start, or they'd go out a different door instead of the one towards the garage or where their car is parked. But they go that way and they turn the key. So there is having faith, and there is sometimes you got the car and you just assume. Sometimes you don't leave time for it not to start because you have formed that habit of faith that your car is going to start. So much so that when it doesn't, you have to be on the phone before you can check up the car to let people know, I didn't save time for anything to go wrong because I just had faith it would start. But the same with exercise or acts of good or anything, you can build up the proof. And when you build up proof, you do build up a certain amount of faith in something, right?
I'm going to share something my wife says all the time. Okay, you were just saying she's so smart, To me, she's extremely smart. And one day she'll be here, and everybody will probably like her more than
us. It's okay.
Listening to me, but that's okay too. But she has a retail store, and people say, well, I'm going to think about it. If it's meant to be, when I come back, the item will still be here. Okay. Take note of that. You just talked about nobody leaves extra time like to jumpstart their car or change a tire because they have faith that it's going to be there the way they left it when they parked it. My wife would say, that faith is only as good as you changing the oil.
That's right.
or putting fuel in the car.
Our dad left time every morning for something to go wrong with the car. He had faith that it might go wrong.
No, he had faith that it would be like the previous day and it would go wrong.
But that's in itself, having that faith kind of supplied his proof in the end.
But isn't it funny that, I mean,
Yeah.
because there's a lot to be said about that, because my wife would, I mean, like, she's so right.
Well, she's
if you
very
don't
matter
change
of fact.
your faith that it's going to start when the key turns is only as good as you changing the oil, changing the filters, and putting good tires on, and changing the brakes when it's time. Like, if you don't do maintenance, your faith is not worth a kick in the dirt.
And that's the thing. That's that great equalizer of your contribution, that work that I was talking about. That's what offsets gravity with blocks and bridges and man's little weak effort that's complemented by physics that is greater than us. And that's our efforts to understand it and work within its rules makes us have faith that, I don't hesitate to go across bridges, even if I saw on the news, you might see there was a plane wreck. The next day you board a flight. Why? Because we still have faith that work is being done, and that is not the norm. Right?
Well, it's because you think to yourself, what's the likelihood that 2 planes would crash? You have faith, right?
Yeah, but then there would have been a lot of people not flying. Remember, for a while they were having that airline trouble where
Boeing.
Yeah, that was a tough time. Well, and some people probably did lose some faith, but you're right. Maybe, but even if you want to say your approach was mathematics, statistical, that's because you do have faith that enough people are working that it's very unlikely.
I just heard a story the other day, and I don't know why, but it was so cute. Person pulls over, picks up a hitchhiker. Where are you going? I'm going to the next town. So am I. No problem. Hitchhiker says, man, I was out here for like 3 hours. What made you stop? Well, I don't know. I was traveling in this direction. Haven't you ever considered that I could be, a serial killer? Driver responds, the likelihood of there being 2 serial killers in the same car is pretty low. I thought that was so funny.
That's good. That's actually really funny. In closing, we got the one funny, and I'll just also leave it with, a lot of being in the heart has to do with freedom. Let's just remember that part of freedom is having that prerogative to choose among several things. The cost of freedom is the work and the maintenance of what you can do in that freedom. Without it, we lose it. So that's it for habits.
Share.
share.
Contribute, comment. Oh my goodness, everybody comment.
We accept.
Please comment.
Yes.
Okay.
Like and share us also, Strong Island. And Leroy, thank you. Really, really a good gift and a good habit that me and you are now in doing this.
We are in a habit.
And also thanks for just not leaving me alone about my own mechanics and getting, because I'm on that exercise kick now too. All right. Until next time, farewell, guys, and adios.
Adios.